Hi! Today I'm going to be talking about Beethoven's 27th Piano Sonata in E minor. Now this piano sonata, it is the beginning of Beethoven's, shall I say, late period. Now this is the first piano sonata that is part of his late period. So now this sonata, it has two movements. Today I'm going to be talking about the first movement. Now, it is in 3/4 time, the first movement. And the tempo marking here, it is in German. Mit Lebhaftigkeit und durchaus mit Empfindung und Ausdruck, which means basically to play it with sort of like a liveliness, but also with emotion and feeling. Now, expression. This piano sonata, this is the first of Beethoven's piano sonatas, where the tempo markings are in German. This is the beginning of his, era, shall I say, where he uses more German terms instead of Italian terms in his notation. So the first subject of the first movement, now this is in sonata form, like always. It begins with these chords. So there's two things here. There's this forte, and then the same rhythm, but it's more it's, shall I say, it's quieter and more expressive. The voice in the left hand. In the first part, there's no voice really. It's just octaves. But here it's yes, and that is paired together. Contrast. Loud again. Now we already modulated to B minor very briefly. With this chord, F sharp, B minor, and then we kind of return. Now this part, it is in sharp contrast because it is very melodic and lyrical, and it's also very long, the phrases. So it's in G major. This E flat kind of makes for a very romantic feeling. From here, that's the first part of the phrase. In G major, and then E minor, C major, B7. Now that is the end of the first subject. Now here, after it quiets down a lot, this same rhythm comes back. But this is now a separate motive that is used later in the piece. So there's sort of a few hints for B minor. Repeated. Ritornando. Then we get a transition, which begins with these octaves. So here it is very abrupt. it starts pianissimo. It outlines E power chord, which consists of the tonic and the dominant. Now, I'm sorry for making a crescendo there. I'm not supposed to make a crescendo. No crescendo. Forte. And then there's this chord. There's this scale. So there's a very long scale, followed by these two chords. Now this is reminiscent of the first part of the subject. These two chords. This is, and then there's another scale. Basically, it's the harmonics are. And then we get a scale, but it's quieter, and it's also in piano. And we suddenly get a B flat. That's very weird because we finished in A minor and then we get a B flat. That's the Neapolitan. Tritone. Now because of this dominant seventh, this diminished seventh chord, the second subject, which is in B minor, the dominant. Now this consists of these fast repeated chords in the left hand. And there's this melody sort of B minor chords in the right hand. And then, so it creates a very dramatic feeling at the beginning, and then it's sort of very tense. As you notice, there's an accent on the first beat. Pianissimo. Here. Now this is a passing note to the F sharp, part of the B minor chord. Now the accompaniment here is very odd because the intervals are tenths, which are very quite awkward to reach, especially if we don't have that large hands. Now, I'd say my hands are not that small either, but so it's a vastly enlarged Alberti bass. Now the syncopated melody. Now this variation. Now this is very dramatic and very, shall I say, angry. Tonic, the dominant tonic, cadence, and then now we get this upper scale. Ends on the fifth degree. cluster. This is very quite modern, and this is very weird harmonic language, especially for the time of 1814. Now this is very, shall I say, it looks forward to the following times. Also in Beethoven's harmonic language, like in pieces later, like the Große Fuge, you can see very modern harmonies and very interesting harmonies. Now this is sort of like a very simple version. Cluster, and then it resolves into the Neapolitan. Repeat. Now here, repeated B minor chords, pianissimo, and that is the end of the exposition. Now this repeated B, elongated, leads into the development. Now the material presented here, it is first of all the repeated chords of the second subject. So there's repeated chords. First they are a single B, and then it goes into chords. And then later, these are from the first subject. So the first subject and the second subject is combined, and then the left hand accompaniment. This is from this rhythm. It's this rhythm in the first subject. So all of this paired together. This is a very interesting chord. So it's G, but then there's the diminished 7. So now the harmonic language previously, first of all, it's back in E minor, right? Modulates to A minor. Flat 7, E major, E flat major, E flat minor. Very ambiguous. Now we reach G. G. Now we reach C major. So we get this sort of memory of this part in the first section. But it's shortened and more ambiguous. A lot of chromaticism here, especially in the left hand. Chromaticism. And then we get a C7. So this part, the arpeggio is in the right hand. And then there's a left hand melody. Now this is the same melody as before. it's transferred. And then the harmonies here, C7, F major, D major. So some sort of passing tone to G minor. Spark to C7, F major, D minor, E flat, and then we get this, and then we go back to A minor. So this anticipates the coming back of E minor. Finally we get E minor, but it's not complete yet. Now we get E minor, but it's the root position is the 5th. Now the same arpeggio. Left hand just outlines E minor arpeggio. Now this material is slowed down. And that's the part where the recapitulation comes back. And so this is very interesting because this is basically just a fragmentation of and so on. And the rhythm, very organic. So it's like fragments. And then as a result here, clash. Quite very interesting. Yes. And then we get the recapitulation. Now this first part. And then all the way up to actually the entire first subject is completely repeated. There's no changes to the first subject, but there is a change to the transition and the second subject itself. Now, before we got E minor part chord, this time we get a C major. But the dynamics are the same. And these scales are the same too. And then instead of B flat major, we get F major. Subject and the tonic. Now the chords are a bit lesser, only 2 notes when at the beginning it was 3, but that is not very significant. So I'd say out of Beethoven's sonatas, this sonata has a very simple sonata form structure because the recapitulation is nearly identical to the exposition. Now most of Beethoven's piano sonatas and just any piece by Beethoven in general that is written in sonata form, there are often very obvious changes, but here I don't see any. So this is the same too. General material is the same. It's cluster. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but because of this cluster, you hear this wah 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 sound because like the sound waves are clashing. So this creates a very interesting effect. Especially if you play it very loudly and powerfully, you can really hear the sonority. Pianissimo. This is repeated. As you may have noticed, there are a lot of rests and it's very fragmented. This creates sort of like a very hesitant and almost tragic effect. And then we get the first subject again, but quieter and higher. Reduce. So what is very interesting is so far whenever we got this material, at the end, we always got a ritardando, which a ritardando is normally set at the end of a piece, but in this case, Beethoven's writes ritardando only during the piece, and when it comes back at the end of the piece, he doesn't write a ritardando. So it's kind of flipped in a way. Ritardando here, but then at the end, it just ends like that. And it's sort of a very simple ending, which is quite interesting as well, but it's very nice. Almost poetic. Very simple. Of course, this was not the end of the piece, as we also get a beautiful second movement. But I will go over that in the next video. Until then, I'll see you next time, and if you have enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.